Hey guys, GHAZZY here with another Diablo 4 video, and in this one, I'm going to talk about the progression of items in Season 4 and my current take of it. I streamed about 12 hours, I think, of D4 last night, and decided that I wasn't going to spam Health Tide all the way to 100. Ended up being level 91, and that's instead of going for 100 through Health Tide, I decided to do Nightmare Dungeons, so all of the 7 glyphs my current character is going to be using is already level 15 before I went to bed for a little bit of a nap, and here we are. But let's crack into the itemization structure and how the feels with playing the game is now in Season 4. So as you first set out to start playing the Season 4, they currently don't have any specific seasonal mechanic. What we do have access to is a tiny bit of a seasonal quest through the Iron Wolves. Now, these Iron Wolves is essentially telling you to go kill enemies in Hell Tides. Now, Hell Tides have a 5-minute downtime, and then they're available for the next 55 minutes in different zones of the area. These guys provide with a random set of items and loot, and also these different types of motion stuff with the temper manuals, and also giving you unique reputation cache as well. So sometimes you can get lucky when you're playing Necromancer to get a Sacrilegious Soul or maybe a Ring of Men Down in the early stage of the game. I did not get that lucky. However, the current state of Necromancers is so goddamn overpowered that we don't really need to worry about it. However, you can scale this by just killing monsters in Health Tide and Battle Evils there to increase the levels to get tremendous amounts of really, really good rewards. So what does this then mean for the progression of the character and your game's experience when you're playing Diablo 4 in Season 4? Essentially, what happens is you will do the seasonal quest, which is just a little bit of a running here, running there, and then you're done. It's very, very, very brief. And then you're just going to park your ass in Health Tides. Leveling is ridiculously fast. Now, I do want to complain a lot about this, but I'm not going to, for the simple fact that Adam Jackson have been very clearly stating when I asked about this in the interview that this part of the game is supposed to cater to the casual gamers. The part of the game that caters to the more endgame oriented player base has more to do with the post level 50 when you get into World Tier 4. So since I don't feel like I should be complaining about this part, I'm just gonna say it's just very fast, and that's about it. The initial first capstone dungeon was something that we did at level 34. We could have done it much sooner. The reason we did it at level 34 was simply because the sacred gear can be equipped as early as level 35. When we got into Hell Tide in a World Tier 3, the difficulty spike was very, very drastic. This obviously got alleviated by the fact that minions are literally the most broken class in the entire game right now. And the fact that as soon as you equipped a little bit of sacred gear, which we got very, very quickly, helped a lot with bridging the gap of the difficulty from it being pretty hard to now we're running through the content again. However, I will say, though, that the maiden boss, which is something you pop in with the blood hearts in the Hell Tide, was actually still rather challenging during this time frame of your progression. However, due to the experience gain that we're achieving at this point in World Tier 3, the actual time spent in Hell Tide, or actually in the World Tier 3 at all, was about an hour, probably less. We didn't even finish the very first Hell Tide in World Tier 3 before we said, you know what, we're level 50 plus, let's just go in and do Elias, the capstone number 2. And that died within a couple of seconds. It was absolutely insane. And now we're into World Tier 4. And that's where this video is going to be tackling a couple of comments around from my own perspective. This is the part of the game that is supposed to cater to the endgame players and the ARPG veterans. Now, I will say this. Obviously, I expected me to end up in a position where I just need to equip my ancestral gear, and the bridged gap between, oh, this is actually difficult, to now it's a cakewalk again was going to be the case. This was not what happened. This is the only time, and the very first time in Diablo 4's history, that I felt that, hey, I'm actually having a purpose of the gear that I'm dropping. I'm looking at the items, and I no longer stare at the item power. I am no longer looking at, well, does it have a life mod? Great. Okay, does it have the damage mod that I want? Great. All right, I'm going to equip it. I'm actually deliberately or specifically looking for item modifiers that really helps me achieve the gaps on the gear that will help me survive. And what I'm talking about is obviously resistances. So I'm going to go through the gear that I have right now to show you what happened when I progressed, because once I actually looked at items that had a life roll and a resistance roll, and then the third mod being something I could, something like intelligence or a damage mod, as long as the item had 2 of those, I would deliberately spend currency to re-roll and make that an item I could equip. So for example, my helmet has poison resistance. My chest piece is fire rest. I have fire rest on my gloves. I got lightning rest on my pants. I got cold rest on my boots. I think I even have rest on this one, don't I? Not anymore, actually. And then we have shadow rest on our amulets. So once I got these resistances covered, I suddenly were able to tank significantly more content. Obviously, this is with the prerequisite of having over 9,230 armor, which essentially Juggernaut Aspect is completely covering. You know, hallelujah for minion builds are just absolutely smacking this big time. Either way, okay, this is funny. This is funny. I got completely distracted because this just happened. So someone made an account called GHAZZY Big Fan and followed me on Twitch. Okay. Anyways, where was I? So the thing is that this is the part of the progression that was it was required, it was mandatory to cap your resistances, and you do this as early as you can. And this is something I did in the early stage of World Tier 4. As soon as I did this, I was now able to actually progress and go from dying almost all the time to, oh, I'm actually surviving. The things that's gonna kill me now are the big hitting enemies if I don't move away from their attacks. So like the maiden boss was still able to hit me quite hard, but I no longer died instantly to monsters teleporting on me. So is this a good thing for Diablo 4's item progression or not? Well, I would say that this was the most entertaining part of me enjoying the progression, going from one step to another when it comes to the gear style. Because before that, I just equipped whatever had a bit higher stats because you're going from normal to sacred, sacred to ancestral. Now, the problem with this is once you progress further and you get to the point where you're running a Paragon tree that picks up things like this, that gives you resistances and extra HP, which I will say is very, very important, as well as the possibility of different gems. Now, I only have 2 gems. I'll talk about that in a bit as well, because if I put 4% all resistance in my jewelries or more with the bigger version of these gems, that's going to cover resistance quite a lot. This is now, thanks to me reaching level 91 and having the Paragon tree to the point where I'm getting tons of resistances, putting me in a very awkward position. Remember how I talked about the gear? I am now currently sitting on 161.8% fire res. I'm sitting at a 128% lightning res, 144 cold, 130.8 poison, and 136.8 shadow res. And there are more resistance nodes on the Paragon tree that I'm supposed to take, not to mention that I don't have the gems. So essentially, you're going to reach a point where resistances on gear becomes completely irrelevant again. And because of it being irrelevant, you no longer have to do this. Now the gear progression means that you want to change your gear yet again. And I think this is actually a good thing. Originally, I was very annoyed with this. But now I will have to go through and look for the gear that has 2 out of 3 modifiers that I want. But now resistances is no longer part of that list, which it was before. So the itemization progression on the game right now goes from you don't care whatever you equip up until World Tier 4, essentially, outside of just getting from normal to sacred, sacred to ancestral. But once in World Tier 4, you're going to want to have resistances. And then once you're going through that part and your progression of your Paragon tree is able to carry the resistance rolls, now you can step away to the next gear progression, which is moving away from resistances on your gear items and going for 3, light mod armor if you need to, and offensive scaling modifiers or utility or quality of life such as movement speed. I think personally, it's pretty simple. It's straightforward. It's not like it's a super advanced approach to handling gear progression this way, but I will say this. It's definitely in need of some balancing. It definitely needs some fine-tuning, but ultimately, it is significantly better than it's been before. Now, I've been waiting for this game to give me a state of it that gets me to enjoy the game for more than 10 hours. And I feel like now I play the game for about 12 hours or 11 hours, and I am very excited to move forward from here. Because what happens after this is that now we're going to be looking at not just the idea of enchanting the gear, where you're basically going to be changing one of the modifiers into another one. This material is, by the way, very easily accessible. So if you're struggling with gear in that transition, don't hesitate on using this material. And it's very cheap to do this, to try to chase those resistance rolls if you need to, or life or armor. So don't be hesitating on that. It actually makes you feel like you have to care about it. Not to mention that they have you possible affixes list, making it much easier for you, or you can very simply follow a build guide to tell about these things as well. So another thing to mention is that they did leave in the core modifiers such as Skeletal Warrior Mastery, Skeletal Golem Mastery and stuff like that, which, you know, we were led to believe was not going to be the case, but apparently very much is the case. So we have that availability in terms of the mastery scaling. So it's going to be very interesting to see where we're going to end up when it comes to the gearing changes, when all of the guides are going to get updated today, tomorrow, and the next couple of days to have them all done. But another problem with this that I was going to mention is that because of the fact that we're looking for these specific modifiers, we are now only going to be wanting to look at legendary items. Why is that, GHAZZY? Well, you get 3 mods on a legendary. Rares only have 2. This literally means that you don't care about rare items. Rare items are completely irrelevant for the purpose of upgrading your character. What does that mean? Well, in reality, if you want to translate this to other games, it means that rare items are essentially magical items in every other game in the universe. And legendary items are essentially rare items in the entire universe, except for Diablo 4. Now, I find that really annoying, but looking past that, what it means is that rare items have lost their value. So I moved on with the game in a position where I just stopped looting rare items. They were completely irrelevant. And the first thing that happened was I got broke. I had no gold whatsoever. And I realized that you have 2 options. Either you loot rares with the purpose of selling them just for the gold, or every now and then making sure that you don't need the upgrade of recycling the legendaries, because once you recycle legendary, and if the modifier on the power has a higher value than what you had before, you're actually going to get that power when you recycle them. But you could just sell them. So what I started doing instead was that I would always recycle legendary items, and I would always just mark rare items as trash. So when I went into town, my process looked like this. I go to the trading vendor, and I right-click the trash, selling all the rares. I don't have to look at them. They're just there for the purpose of making me gold. And then I could go through the legendary items for the sake of either upgrading my character's gear or to apply a new legendary power. So that's the process I started doing to achieve goals so I could afford actually upgrading it. Another thing to mention was the gems. Now, to add a socket, you need a scattered prism. This is something that's very rare at the end of Nightmare Dungeons. It's also pretty rare for the bigger chests in Legion encounters, for example. However, it is something that is pretty common against world bosses. And these are very rare. And I kind of like it because of how simple it is to sort your resistance issues with the gems. And because of the rarity of Scattered Prism, it's making it much harder to get to a point where you can capture resistances without actually looking at the gear modifier. So I'm a little on the fence on this one, but it is actually a really cool thing. And then obviously you'll be crafting your gems. You need a lot of the fragments before you get there. So it's not like something you're going to have a tons of. So you have to actually progress your way to be able to get them. For example, I don't have a Royal Emerald in my items. I only have 2 Flawless because I don't have enough fragments to actually make the Royal yet. So that's how the system works when it comes to the sockets and the progression of that. And I think that it at least puts the gearing to be a little bit more interesting to move forward with. However, once you're done with these things, there's some other parts that's happening, and that is obviously Masterworking, which is something we open up with the pit later on. And that is something that we were talking about, greater affixes that can drop as well. For example, my Doom armor here, it is providing me with a greater affix on the life modifier, making it significantly stronger than a regular rolled life modifier. And the other part is obviously the tempering. Now, the tempering, I really like, and this was obviously shuffled and rebalanced, so all of the guys are going to be updated. The links to all my guys is down in the descriptions below. So, for example, my weapon here, I could choose the weapons off category, and I can choose the offensive category. So, just for the sake of it, I'm going to show you the list of this. And what's really good with this is how it's just showing you the approach of what's available. So, let's say I want to have a summoning augment for the skeletal mage attacks to cast twice. This will then cost me some currency, but again, there's no gold cost to this. And in gear pieces, defensive ones, you can actually temper resistance rolls, and it does not cost gold, only these materials. So I do this, and I'll see that, hey, I got summoning damage and minion attack speed. So in this case, I got minion attack speed, right? 19%. What happens now is that if I were to re-roll this, say I want to go for another one, it's going to take me a temper reroll cost, and I only have 4 more rerolls. Once I'm done rerolling this item, I will no longer be able to temper it, and it's just going to be locked. And I do believe I have one of those items. Yes, most of these items are rerolled to the max except my weapon, and that just makes me unable to temper them further. This to me means that in the end, we're going to be trying to get the mods we want on an item, and then we're going to temper them to the perfect stats, and then we're going to master crafting, and that's the process of the min-max items. But again, I wanted to mention the fact that you don't need to spend gold for this, and you get the list by showing what you want here in the list here, and all those are listed, which were not in the patch notes, which is why some of the guides have a slightly outdated information on this end. So to the real question then, has D4 gone from D4 bad to D4 good with this information? I don't know yet. That's my honest answer. I really, really don't know. The progression is significantly better. I'm not a fan of the 1 to 50. I think that the state of going into gear progression for World Tier 4 felt interesting for once, which is a very good step in the right direction. Do I feel like Resistance becomes kind of whatever at the late stage? Sure. Is that how they designed it? Maybe. Or that's their desire? That's okay if it is. I don't mind it. We also have to keep in mind that the game is so fast progression, and it might be the fact that they want the game to be like this. And if that's the case, that's also fine. Because once you're maxed out, the idea is to get your glyphs maxed out and then go from there into engaging with the aspirational content, such as the pit, which is supposed to be designed to a point where you cannot actually beat all of it. And that's the goal that the veteran players can chase. I don't know what else to say. I will see how long of enjoyment I'm going to get from the game. But I feel like there's definitely going to be a point where I'm going to feel like, hey, I have done everything. I feel like I am now just going through a slogfest and I'm no longer having fun. And once I reach that point, I'm probably just going to say, hey, it's time for me to play another build and then move on. And if that's the way the game's going to be designed, that's perfectly fine. We'll see if that's the case. So far, my verdict is very simple. I'm enjoying myself. I'm having a good time playing the game. Are there improvements to be made? Absolutely. Is it better than before? Absolutely. That's all I have to say in this video. Make sure you leave your comments down below in the comments section what you think of the season so far. Hit the like button, subscribe for more content, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Till then, stay safe. Keep rocking.